Come down here on this side of the tent, so if it does rain, you're out of. We have 3 more chairs here. We have a lot of room over here. So we want to make sure everyone is safe.
There's some space over here, folks, if you want. Yep. You can move in a little bit more if you'd like. It's okay. Make some room for everybody. Got a few more. What timing, huh? Okay.
Listen, I don't have my speech ready.
Okay. In the words of Ecclesiastes, a season is set for everything, a time for every experience under heaven. A time for dancing and a time for wailing. A time for birthing and a time for dying. A time for speaking and a time for silence. A time for seeking and a time for losing. The time of mourning is a complicated time, filled with many emotions and memories, both bitter and sweet. We begin our service with the recitation of psalms and prayers, thus linking Elsie's life with the 3,000-year-old tradition of the people of Israel and the eternity of God. I invite you to join me, if you wish, in the recitation of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil. My cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Share with you a modern meditation. After a while, you learn the subtle difference between holding a hand and chaining a soul. And you learn that love doesn't mean leaning, and that company doesn't always mean security. And you learn that kisses aren't contracts, and presents aren't promises. And you begin to accept your defeats with your head up and your eyes straight ahead, with the grace of a woman or a man, not the grief of a child. And you learn to build all your roads on today, because tomorrow's ground is too uncertain for plans, and futures have a way of falling down in mid-flight. After a while, you learn that even sunshine burns if you bask too much. So you plant your own garden, you decorate your own soul, instead of waiting for someone to bring you flowers. And you learn that you really can endure, that you really are strong, and that you really have worth. And you learn, and you learn. With every goodbye, you learn. In 1910, 8 years before Elsie Kurlander was born, the Euclid Beach Park Grand Carousel debuted at Euclid Beach Park. How many of you remember that?
Oh, sure.
Well, not the debut in 1910.
We all remember.
The park closed in 1969, but the memories still remain. In fact, in 2014, the restored carousel was introduced once again at the Western Reserve Historical Society. And today you can go and relive the past with those very same horses and carriages, and you could even use a token that resembles the one that was used back in the day. I begin with this remembrance of the carousel at Euclid Beach because that was certainly one of the places Elsie and Bernie liked to visit. It is the image of the carousel that evokes the ups and downs and the constant motion of life. As Joni Mitchell famously crooned, we're captured on a carousel of time. We can't return, we can only look behind from where we came. Looking back on the life of Elsie Kurlander requires a long look back, 103 plus years long. Unbelievable. Born in 1918,
Right.
born in 1918 to Morris and Anna Gold, and sister to Irving and Bernard of blessed memory. Elsie was raised in Lakewood, where her dad ran his store, with extended family close by. In fact, her cousins were her lifelong best friends. She graduated from Lakewood High and enrolled in the Ohio State University for 2 years before being fixed up with Bernie. They married at Euclid Avenue Temple, the former Fairmount Temple, on 82nd and Euclid, and brought 2 children into the world, Richard of blessed memory and Barbara. They raised a family and found time to enjoy one another's company, sometimes with Elsie playing the piano and Bernie singing along. Sometimes they would go out dancing, like they did when Fairmount Temple member trips took those visits to Euclid Beach. The seasons they go round and round. Bernie's tragic death in 1969, so many years ago, thrust Elsie into a new reality. She moved into the Mark IV, which became a safe haven for her, a home, a new life, with many friends and an active social life. She traveled to Israel and Hawaii and other destinations to which she always wanted to visit. She was active in the synagogue sisterhood, now the Women of Fairmount Temple, and engaged in many hobbies, including mahjong, canasta, bridge. She did knitting, needlepoint. Elsie volunteered with ORT, she worked there too, and Hadassah, Jewish organizations that supported American Jews in their advocacy for Israel. Elsie was an avid reader, an accomplished cook, making the likes of cheese balinces, apricot strudel, and sometimes the very simple but old standby toasted cheese with mustard. Elsie was a loving and attentive daughter to her parents throughout the length of her days and their days. And that love that she exemplified served as a role model for Barbara, for what it means to honor your parents, the 5th commandment. Pre-pandemic, Barbara would make sure to take her mom to music at Menorah Park, or otherwise Elsie would never have gone on her own, but she enjoyed it when you took her, Barbara. She was a devoted grandmother to Brian, Donna, Laura and TJ, Eric and Scott. She was a great-grandmother of Alexa, Will, Reagan, and Ilsa. Scott lovingly remembers visiting his grandma at the Mark IV, at which she had a view there that was perfect. It was a view of Beechwood Place, which Elsie deemed to be her mall. Well, everybody deemed it to be her mall. In fact, they didn't even have to go to the mall because they felt they were living vicariously just by looking at the mall, that they had really visited there. So it was Grandma's mall, right from her window at the Mark IV. And Eric shared these recollections. Grandma Elsie had many things that made me love and cherish her as my grandmother, more than she ever knew. She was kind-hearted and always looked out for our best interests. Her agenda was always known, and whether we agreed or disagreed, she always wanted what was best for us. One thing that I'll never forget was that in her last days, when it was our time to be there for her, she still tried to give me candy to take home. And that candy was all she had left. That's just what she did as a grandmother. She was giving, loved us unconditionally, and never sent us home with an empty stomach. Love you mucho, Grandma. Love you mucho, Grandma Elsie. Eric. Beautiful. Remarkably, Elsie Kurlander lived through 2 pandemics and even survived a COVID-positive diagnosis at that senior age. She weathered a century of life's vagaries, moving through moments of challenge and seasons of joy. And her connection throughout, her strong connection to Barbara, in lots of ways Barbara has carried her through these hard days. She loved you, she loved talking to you. When she called, she really wanted to talk to you, not so much your spouse, even though he knew that she loved him. But it was, she would call. If she heard Jeff, she'd hang up, call again. I only say this because you kind of were smiling through telling me this story. It is what it is, right?
True as it is.
People admired her because of who she was, and had respect for her because this, she didn't mince words, and you get to a certain age, I guess, in your life where you just are who you are, and I believe that she appreciated everyone in her life, just admired and respected her, and even tolerated her at times, for sure. She survived all these moments of challenge, all these seasons of joy. And today, we honor her longevity. She strongly outpaced my tenure at Fairmount Temple, and I've been there 20 years. But what an incredible legacy. Today, we honor that. We honor her legacy, her fiery persona, her dedication to family, her dedication to the Jewish people. 103 years old. What an amazing journey she has made on that carousel of life. Zichrona Libracha, may Elsie's memory be an enduring blessing. And let us say, Amen. It is a fearful thing to love what death can touch. A fearful thing to love, hope, dream to be and owe to lose. A thing for fools this, and a holy thing to love. For your life has lived in me, your laugh once lifted me, your word was gift to me. To remember this brings a painful joy. 'Tis a human thing, love, a holy thing, to love what death has touched. Whether it was directly or indirectly, whether you're just here for Barbara and her family, we take a moment and we consider the gifts that she brought to this world, to this life. We pause for a few moments before turning to El Malei Rachamim. We invite you to rise as you are able for the recitation, chanting of the memorial prayer. El male rachamim, shochein bamromim, amsei menucha nechona, tachat kanfei hashchina, bemalot kedoshim mutorim, gezoar rakia mazirim, et nishmat Elsie bat Morris Vana shalcha leolama began Eden tehei menuchata ana bala rachamim hastireha beseter kenafecha leolamim utror vitror achayim et nishmata Adonai unachalata v'tanuach b'shalom al mishkava v'nomar Amen. El Malei Rachamim, exalted, compassionate God, grant infinite rest in your sheltering presence among the holy and the pure. To the soul of Elsie Kurlander, who has gone to her eternal home, Merciful One, we ask that our loved one find perfect peace in your eternal embrace. May her soul be bound up in the bond of life. May she rest in peace. And let us say, Amen. We now turn to the mourner's Kaddish. It is the tradition for the direct mourners to read the Kaddish. Barbara, I will read the Kaddish along with you. For those of you who wish to join with Barbara, if your tradition, you can do so. Otherwise, you can participate in the amens during this prayer. Yitgadal v'yitgadash shemei Rabbah, be'alma divrach hirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'gala uv'izman kari v'imru. Amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam alomeo maya, Yitbarach, v'yishtabach, v'yitpa'ar, v'yitromam, v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar, v'yitaleh, v'yitalal, shemei dekudesha, brichu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran be'alma v'imru. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Oseh shalom bimromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn, comfort to all who are bereaved, and we say together, Amen. And now it is a custom to put the earth in the grave. For those uninitiated with Judaism, it can be considered not so respectful. In Judaism, it's the opposite. Our loved one is exposed right now, and Elsie can't care for herself. So we start this process of taking care of her ourselves. The good folks at the cemetery will do more of the work, but we invite family members to begin that process. It's to pick up the shovel. Once you're done putting the shovel full, you put it back into the barrel for the next person.